Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary. It's great to see you here, and I appreciated the time to talk to you earlier about health and safety for workers in the chip industry. As I mentioned in my opening statement, Silicon Valley has been the home of chip manufacturing for many years. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's helped build the valley. On the other hand, there has sometimes been a downside. Multiple studies in the 1980s and 90s found that women working at microelectronics manufacturing sites had miscarriages at twice the expected rate, and although the industry has made significant strides in terms of the use of hazardous chemicals, in some cases there is no alternative for a hazardous chemical in the manufacturing, and in that case special care must be made to prevent exposure to the workforce. I'll just note that this is from an OSHA missive, and I'll read it. OSHA's mandatory PELs remain in effect. However, OSHA recommends that employers consider using the alternative occupational exposure limits because the agency believes that exposures above some of these alternative occupational exposure limits may be hazardous to workers even when the exposure levels are in compliance with OSHA standards. And in fact, it's the EPA standards in those cases that need to be applied. I'll just say this, I appreciate your willingness to work with me on this. I look forward to vigorously engaging with you to see how we can get the great benefit of the CHIPS Act, but also protect our workforce. Let me ask another question. There's a company in California, not in my district, with an important question that has broad policy implications. This company never offshored, and so as a consequence, their costs were higher because labor costs are higher in the United States. They are worried that they might be at a disadvantage in the selection process because of their higher cost structure. What's the department's general view on using the loan program to use U.S.-only semiconductor manufacturers to refinance existing debt if it results in additional capital investments in the United States? What's the view on using the loan program to allow U.S.-only semiconductor manufacturers to use loans for purposes of funding operational and workforce development costs? And is there concern about the higher cost structure disadvantaging them in the competition accurate?
Yeah. So a couple reactions, mindful of time. On your first point, I am totally committed to working with you like we talked about. These are necessary. These companies use a lot of chemicals. Necessarily, it's heavily chemical based. And as you say, sometimes OSHA isn't enough. So let's figure out better ways to work with companies to
Absolutely
secure health and safety. Secondly, the answer is yes. We look well upon using loan authority and grant authority to help small companies, U.S.-based companies, to defray the additional cost associated with the cost of U.S. labor. I would say, in a way, that's the point of this whole program. I mean, the truth of it is, you come from Silicon Valley, that's where all semiconductors once were, and then it was in search of cheap labor that these companies all went to Taiwan, China, Malaysia, et cetera. That's the point of this subsidy, to allow American companies and American workers, stay in this business, accounting for the fact that it is more expensive. So I'd say we're going to look. I have assembled an amazingly talented team. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal about it a few months ago. I'd welcome any of you to come over to the department to meet this team. We have some top-notch investment people, a top-notch loan expert. We're going to be as creative as possible to stretch the money as much as we can to help American businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, and I yield back.